Welcome to episode 186 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. Today we have such an exciting episode where I just finished interviewing Ran Harpaz. He is the CEO of lettuce.co, and he works with Gabrielle, who we just heard last week, Gabrielle Tenaglia, who is the fractional CMO at Lettuce. And I thought it would be really fascinating to have these two back-to-back episodes from these executives from Lettuce, and particularly Ron this week, because he brings essentially a 360-degree view of independent consulting, of the business of one, to share with us. You'll hear in this episode where he shares he has been an independent consultant in the past. Right now is the CEO of a company who is creating software solutions for independent consultants and businesses of one. He is also a CEO who hires a lot of fractional employees, and he'll talk with you about the way he thinks about hiring fractionals, the way he thinks about pricing for fractionals, the way he thinks about why it's a benefit rather than something to apologize for as a fractional, and also how he works with his main investor for Lettuce is also an independent with a multi-billion dollar business. So we cover so much ground in this episode. I highly recommend you stay to the end, because throughout this episode he shares this unique perspective that he brings to us as a business owner and as a business of one and independent consultants. And so with that introduction, let's dive into this week's episode. Without further ado, Ron, I would love it if you would introduce yourself to us.
Thank you, Melissa. Wow, that's such a great introduction from you. I appreciate the opportunity and the audience and the ability to say some of those things on the record and not just in smaller forums. So thank you again. In terms of background, I've been in startup and technology for my entire career, 20 plus years, more than I care to admit. Started as an engineer, grew up through the ranks of leadership and management and building startups. Early on, focused on risk and cybersecurity and stuff like that. And then got a really good chance to work on financial risk management at PayPal, which is a great company that I loved. And that got me my introduction into financial services and fintech. And I saw a bunch of startups from that perspective as well. I had a chance to do business consulting at McKinsey. I had a chance to do insurtech at Hippo Insurance. So really spend a bunch of time in this industry seeing both innovation at the very early stage of like startup innovations out of Silicon Valley, as well as large scale companies who took this to a level where it, meaningful impact for the entire economy. I found that financial problems really lend themselves to technology solutions. It's all about rules and numbers, and you could really build consistent, scalable algorithm to solve financial problems. So I've been passionate about that for many, many years. And I'm glad that I'm having a chance to do that again at Lettuce.
Yeah, it's so exciting. I love finding solutions that are specifically built for independent consultants and for solo consultants and freelancers. And so the fact that you're heading up this company and have founded this company to solve that problem is so exciting and such a important tool for us to really free up time and free up energy and be able to focus on our zones of genius. So let's look at this from so many different angles, Ron. The first I would love to talk with you about is you're running a business that's primarily engaging fractionals to build the business and move from that inception point through some more maturity. So I would love to hear more about your thought processes as a CEO and why you're choosing to hire fractionals and what you've learned about hiring fractionals. So we'll start there, and then I'm sure it'll dig in further.
Absolutely. So Lettuce, as you alluded to, is a company focused on helping solopreneurs, business of one, freelancer, professionals run their business better by really taking off their plate the financial management. We have a solution that helps with tax and accounting and payroll and all of the headaches that come with running your own business. And, I've been a solo myself. I've worked with professionals who are solo throughout my career in different capacities. And when I started Lettuce a year and a bit ago, one of my first go-to ideas were, let's talk to everybody that I know who's really like a high caliber solo, tell them about the idea and see what they think. And in those conversations, it was very evident that people would want to work on this even prior to it being fully funded and even prior to it having great market traction. And I said, you know what? That is actually a solution that's hiding in plain sight. And all of the first hires into Lettuce were all solos, were all fractionals. So our head of marketing, our head of engineering, our first couple of engineers,
Mm.
our lead product person, our lead designers are all fractional gurus in their field. Some of them, by the way, without naming names, are literally retired and are coaching others in how to do product or design or marketing. And I brought them back and said, you know what? Spend with me 20 hours a week. Let's build something together and see how it goes. And what we found together is actually we can build a phenomenal team with a ton of experience, way above what a startup our age can punch normally, solving problems that each of us separately know from our real life, and then coming together and saying, okay, we're solving it for us and others. And after a while, it moves from being like an idea or a hack into a culture. So every single person by default joining Lettuce starts as a fractional. We find amazing talent this way all across the country in all kind of points in life, typically very experienced, very knowledgeable, very passionate to solve the problem. We bring them in, and then they find their cadence. Some people decide they want to work 2, 3 days a week because of a family preference. Some of them have a pet project. Some of them are serving another client in a different capacity. And this has created really, I think, exceptional culture of innovation where people who know this problem firsthand are building the solution. Most of them are also using Lettuce for their own business of one. So we're eating our own dog food. Funny, there's a blog post that one of our customers, Brendan Grace, who's a fractional CTO and an awesome person, wrote that says, when a team of people build a product that they really need,
Mm.
and what's called dog fooding in Silicon Valley, eating your own dog food, trying your own product, finding your own things, that makes the product so much better.
Mhm.
It's not theoretical, it's real. So it's a long answer to your question, but the team has been one of the highlights of what Lettuce is all about.
Yeah, it's so phenomenal. Tell us, if you just leave your CEO hat on for a moment, Ron, as your team has grown and you get to choose, I would assume, based on funding and that kind of thing, that you could bring on employees and you could start thinking about building a different type of culture rather than having people always start as fractionals. What goes through your mind as a CEO as you're thinking about hiring fractionals and how you're paying them and how you're engaging and managing them?
Yeah. So I have a preconceived notion, a bias, if you will, that it's better for both them and the company to test it out. I've been hiring people, for my entire career, hired many hundreds, probably more, and interviewed I don't know how many thousands. And there is always this point where basically you're making a leap of faith as a hiring manager and a CEO, and you're making a leap of faith as an employee to say, okay, this is it. I don't know more than what I got in the interview, but I think this is it. And I think historically, there wasn't any other option. Like you had to get a job so you could buy your groceries and pay your rent, and that was the only option. What goes through my head right now is for people who are experienced and know their sweet spot, it's actually more efficient for them and more effective for me as a hiring CEO to go into a 2, 3 month fully committed exercise of let's work on this problem together. And once it's amazing, typically what happens, I tell the person, you know what, let's move from a fractional to a retainer. So maybe
Mm.
you work 4 days a week on Lettuce and you have one small client that you maintain or you coach a couple of people. And then some of those actually moved into being full-time employees because they prefer that setup.
Mhm.
But it happens once they are really happy with it. I'm really happy with it. And we go with this after knowing that we work really well together. I would recommend this
Yeah.
to anybody, both on the hiring side and on the contributing side, because I think it teaches you a lot about the company, its customers, its business, its culture. It also allows, the hiring manager, CEO, or GM of a business to gauge what kind of talent they need over time. So there are times where I need a real expert on SEO and search optimization. There are times where I need experts on creative and ads. There are times where I need a product manager who's a tax subject matter expert. And there are times where I need a data engineer. Those are not always available. I don't always need them at the same capacity. And both the company needs and the personal needs change over time. So that gives everyone so much more flexibility to really maximize their talent, my needs, and the match of those, which I see phenomenal output out of that.
Yeah. I think it's so helpful to hear your perspective because a lot of times, as fractionals or as independent consultants, we think we're overcoming some challenge to try to sell ourselves as fractional versus what you're describing, which is that you see that business model as a benefit to you and your business, and there's nothing to overcome there. It's actually something to amplify that it is a benefit to the company and to the CEO to have that type of talent and to kind of a trial period, but also knowing that it may continue forward in a retainer or something like that if the consultant prefers.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the culture, the society is going through a transition right now. And I think you're alluding to something very important, that some people are still apologetic about the
Mm,
fact that they took a freelance fractional job. And I'm saying, go all in. Like, say, I am choosing to be a fractional. I am choosing to work at more than one place. I'm choosing to be multi-homed, if you will. And I'm not compensating for anything, and I'm not apologizing for anything. I'm actually great at what I'm doing, and I want to do this for one, two, three companies at a time. And I may go up and down on my hours depending on the need. And this is actually a win for the company that's hiring my skills. And it's a win for me as I'm learning more and more skills and competencies that would make the next engagement even better.
mm,
I would recommend people come into this saying out loud, I'm great at what I do. I want to do it with whoever's hiring, and flexibility is a feature, not a bug. And
mm.
therefore, let's use it such that both sides leverage that feature.
Yeah. Unapologetically. It's so good. Tell me, when you go out to find fractionals, where are you finding them, Ron?
Yeah. So first, we've been fortunate that because the circles of the team have been fractional themselves and we've all worked together in past companies, we had an amazing network and we still have an amazing network to hire from. So I would say 70+% of our team comes from our own networks.
Yeah.
But then I've gone out into a number of communities and fractional platforms to get talent. A Team is one of our closest partners, and we have a lot of folks coming from A Team. Work with Catalant, work with Upwork. We have a number of communities where people recommend us and we recommend them. Fractional jobs have been a great one. Freelancing females have been a great community to work with. There is actually a significant amount of influential circles where those folks actually tell each other about relevant jobs. And you're starting to see the cross influence between them and how people who are really great are actually connectors and they participate in more than one economy. Somebody mentioned it to me the other day. There is the concept of a go getter. There are people who are go givers and they
Mm.
actually tell others about opportunities and they educate people about where to find work. We've been very fortunate to tap into many of these networks. And I'm pretty sure that I'm forgetting at least three more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, if we were to boil down the kind of formula, if you will, if you're an independent consultant or a freelancer or fractional wanting to fill your pipeline with more opportunity, it sounds like the main focus really is networking that you would recommend. Is there anything else, Ron, that you would say? And you've been a freelancer too. We're getting all the different angles from you here today.
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
definitely say networking is a big deal. I would also
Yeah.
say publish your work,
Mm,
write about it or podcast about it. And there are so many channels these days. Find the one that works for you and write out or publish your thoughts. You never know how something that you say is going to resonate with somebody who's working on something different, but the interdisciplinary mind says, "Oh, they're solving problem X. I have problem Y. They have some overlap. Let's talk about it." I found one of my first product managers through a blog post and podcast that he published that was talking about something very different. And I was like, you know,
mm,
that sounds interesting. I'm not sure exactly why. Let's talk. So definitely do that. I would also say take on fractional projects often.
mm,
And even if you're not fully sure that that project is going to materialize into either a full-time job or a long-term commitment, take the project, do it as the best you can, and then write about it if you get permission,
mm,
and then start this cycle of I learned something, I'm teaching something.
mhm.
It's really powerful.
Yeah. One of the concepts I love to talk about is turning your delivery into an asset for your business. And so that folds in so nicely to that concept of constantly thinking about how do you turn what you're doing into case studies or into content and into tools and into the ability to productize more of what you're doing and ultimately able to become known as an expert in a certain space over time.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And I would say what you said, 10x with, I think, the tools that are available today,
Mm,
all the lightweight AI tools, all of the creative support, tools around it, you could really write and publish and create and deliver so many different things in ways that are much easier than it used to be. If you're thinking 10 years ago, publishing a case study about something that you've done would be a project in itself. Like
right.
you would finish a 3 month project and you take another month to write a case study. And
Yeah.
today, with AI, with tools, with templates, and with references that you have in the industry, you could really create a case study in 2 days. And it would
Right.
be really high quality, and people would cross publish it and refer to it. It has become something that I believe should be in every solo's toolkit. And those case studies start to build, as you mentioned, your portfolio as an expert. And you become a subject matter expert not overnight, but incrementally. You publish once, you publish twice, you get on a podcast, somebody invites you, you go on a panel, and all of a sudden you're a guru. And like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, I'm a guru now. Let's let's do more of that.
I love that. This lends so nicely to the next topic I wanted to explore with you, Ron, which is really you're building solutions for the independent consultant, kind of going back to this toolkit. And tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about supporting solo consultants to scale themselves.
So first, I think it's a big deal for solos to think of themselves as a business owner
Mhm.
and say, I am actually moving from a freelancer who's selling their hours to somebody who has a business. And that's actually I think, a mindset shift that is very meaningful for many solos who, for societal and cultural reasons, over time forget how meaningful it is to run a business as a way to serve clients and get clients beyond just selling an additional hour of your work. And the reason I'm spending time on this is for people who are a business of one, the core of the business is them. And once they realize that it is a meaningful business, they start building the toolkit, as you say, around it to say, okay, I now need to scale my time, my reach, my value, my deliverable, so that this business that is, myself in a box becomes something that more and more customers and clients can know about and consume and recommend and refer, etc. And that transition is non-trivial because I think, again, historically, some people stumbled into freelancing because they lost a job, they didn't love their boss, they relocated, they wanted a change. There was some reason that in their head, they have a story of why they started freelancing. And after a few years, they forget to refresh the story and do a rebrand, like
Mm.
all the big brands do, and say, you know what? The Ran of 2024 is actually a business delivering this. And why am I saying all that? Because at Lettuce, when we work with so many solos who are business of one, we see that once they make that shift and say, okay, I'm a business owner, I have a business, I'm going to serve clients, I'm going to scale, I'm going to learn, I'm going to do it better. They identify tools they need to have to give them that platform to stand on confidently and do what they do really well. I'll give examples. We have people who are therapists and lawyers, veterinarians. We have a pilot. We have marketing experts and data experts and analytics, like so many different people. And you speak with them and you see that they're great at what they do. And it's very evident when somebody is an advertising marketer, creative, they're great at part of the brain that I'm terrible at, and they're not great at taxes and accounting, for example, right? And it's not surprising. Like people who make amazing jingles or creative for TV are surprisingly not great at, summarizing their P&L.
Yeah.
And very quickly we get into the conversation where I tell them, hey, you do you, let us do the rest. And let us as a solution is an example of building that platform
Mhm.
so you can focus on your business. And I think there are other things you need to do, but definitely having the capability to run a business is something you need to pause for a second, think about, say, okay, I'm serious about it. This is what I'm doing. Let me get the right tools for the job.
Yeah. You're speaking my love language here, Ron, because this is what I talk about so often on this podcast. We're not an independent consultant. We're not a freelancer. We're not a fractional. We are a business. And even to the point, I want to hear your perspective on this. I like to say we're not even selling ourselves, really. At the end of the day, we're selling a solution, a service that our business offers that we happen to deliver. You were wearing all of those different hats. And to your point, when I first started out as an independent, it was relocation, right? What you went through those examples. We relocated to Hawaii. And so I resigned and my company said, can you stay on as a management consultant? And that was the beginning of all of this 12 years ago. But maybe took me 4 or 5 years to think of myself as a business. Before it was just to your point, I want to make some more money. So what project could I sell, that kind of thing. I'm really curious as you think about this idea of the business as of one and what your thoughts are about what you're selling and what you're not selling and that mindset as consultants go to market.
Yeah, that's actually a very deep thought. And I love that you set it up that way because I think it evolves. I think
Mm,
people need to start wherever they are. And some
yeah.
people start because of an external reason, an internal reason. And we gave all of those examples. And
Yeah.
then they like it. And the clients love them. And it works. And they say, you know what? I'm actually going to do this. And they do it a couple of more years and they get better. And I think at some point they have a revelation. It's not prescriptive. I don't know when and how to tell them that it happened, but they know that, like, okay, I'm serious about it. And I think at that point in time, calling it a business, naming it, structuring it, getting the right advice, legal, tax, accounting, financial, all of that is really important because from that point on, it is a company. And you can decide as the company owner that you want to be on your own. It's a business of one for the next X years. You could decide that you bring in a couple more consulting experts to help you because you're great at
Mhm.
ABC, but now you need D for a project. Bring somebody in. There is a network effect, there is a chain of businesses of one. Bring them in, have them help you. Then you can bring somebody else in. But think of this as a business. And then what you sell to your clients and customers is this business is able to do these things. And most of them I do as the business owner, the expert, but I also have a network of others that help me as needed. And therefore I can take projects that may be more complicated or require more layers of knowledge. And you may bring some of the knowledge in for the next project, or you decide to focus. Once you see it that way, some people then have an aha moment and say, oh, I could actually build a whole consulting business out of this.
Mm.
And then there's a choice. You could decide to build a bigger business and have more people, employees, consultants, etc. Or you can say, I love the fact that it's a business of one.
Yeah.
I want to be the one setting the pace. I want to be the one choosing the clients. And and then I think at that point in time, you went through two or three steps in that maturity ladder, if you will, to say, I found my balance. I know this can happen. And I'm alluding to that because there is a lot of talk
Mm.
about the future of work. And in my mind, the future of work, the future in general is independent.
Mm.
People want to be independent. People want to control how, where, who they work with. And there's a bunch of things holding them back. Some of them are cultural and societal, some of them are financial. But over time, those get better. And since I believe the future of work is independent, I'm watching the trends. And you probably heard Sam Altman talk about the fact that he believes at some point AI is going to enable what he calls a $1 billion business of one,
Mm.
where basically some people are able to build companies so meaningful based on what they do that the valuation could get to those levels. But we don't have to go that far. You see creators and influencers that already have significant following and are making significant amount of income, even at millions. It's a big deal. Like a business
Right.
one that run millions is a big deal. We don't have to go to the billions. And I strongly believe that we all have to accept that this is the future and start roaring in that direction.
Mm, yeah. I love thinking about it at that big picture, Ron, because then it makes what you're doing on a day-to-day basis seem a lot more easy and simple as well. When you think about, let's just start with the millions. When you think about a business of one and a fractional or solo consultant who's generating millions, what do you see are the key components to that type of business?
Yeah, I think it starts before you get to millions. It starts with the steps we said before, finding your sweet spot, becoming an expert, having a following, giving, not just getting, finding repeat clients, etc. At some point, I think that is a business that needs to be managed. And at that point in time, you need to figure out what tools and supporting functions you bring from the outside to sustain it.
Hmm.
And also, because it's a business of one, it's important to find a balance between what your business gives you to your personal life and what you give back. And I think in the chase to get to millions, some people sometimes forget that the purpose of all of this was to create a work life that they love. So I would strongly recommend that as opposed to public companies who chase quarterly earnings and have to show the market that every quarter is better than the last, like somebody who runs a business of one that they love, not optimize for the revenue target, but optimize for, am I doing something meaningful for others, meaningful for me in a sustainable way that I can now do for as long as I want.
Yeah.
I would say financially, it's pretty important at that level, even at hundreds of thousands, that you get the right tools in place, get the right advice to make sure that you're managing your business in a way that's effective for you, for your family, for your goals. And it's non trivial. Once you start making hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, the business starts consuming most of your attention. And therefore, it's harder to chase every invoice and make sure everybody pays you and make sure that you pay your quarterly taxes and that you're on top of your accounting. And those things become more of a burden once you're really busy. When you just start out and you have two clients and you send them an invoice once every other month, you have a Google Sheet, you manage it, whatever. Once a year, you take your box of receipts, you go to your accountant. Okay, fine. Once you have a real business, and this is now there's real money flowing in and out, you probably want to take it to the next level. And the reason I started Lettuce is I talked with so many solos that had real anxiety about their financials because it's no longer a side gig. It's now something that I do that takes care of my family and my future. And I want to make sure that I do it right and in a compliant way and with all of the right things. And I also want to make sure that I'm optimizing my finances as a company. When you're a corporation, you have a whole tax and accounting department, and there is a CFO and an accounting lead, and they do a bunch of work, and you hire the big four. When you're a business of one, it's you. And sometimes you go online and you get a QuickBooks or a TurboTax or a FreshBooks or a whatever, and then you cobble together a solution and you go to the neighborhood accountant who might be your uncle and you say, hey, help me out. I want people to understand that they can have, as a business of one, the same financial benefits, tax benefits, retirement optimizations, healthcare solutions that companies have. And that was the trigger to start Lettuce because I believe people deserve that so they can focus on their actual business.
And sometimes putting those things in place earlier than later just provides the ability to scale rather than trying to fix it while the plane is already flying and serving as a limiter. I'm curious, Ron, when you think about the financial side of this type of a business, one of the common questions I get from consultants is how to think about investing in the business and versus expenses and profit and that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on investing in these types of independent consultant businesses and where it makes the most sense to invest?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question because I think it goes to the heart of taking your business seriously. And I
Mm,
think that transition from, hey, I'm freelancing, it's a gig, I don't know, to I'm running my business is where you start making those investments. And I'll give a couple of examples. Actually knowing what's right in terms of legal structure, accounting, tax structure for your business is non-trivial. You can go read about it, you can ask, your friends, you can watch a bunch of random YouTube videos, or you can say, I know I need a solution. Let's go somewhere that solutions are available. And there are numerous solutions. We are one of them, not the only one. I think the earlier you recognize, I have a business, I need to run it professionally, let me get the right solution, the better off you are. Because as you said very, very astutely, the cost of doing it right is insignificant compared to the cost of doing it wrong.
mm,
And like when you have a business that runs and you got your books incorrectly and you have to go back and change it, it's not only that you missed on deductions and paying accordingly, like that's a bunch of waste and that money should be in your pocket, but the headache, the stress, the anxiety, the audit, you don't want that when you have a growing business.
yeah.
So I would really encourage people as soon as you say, yeah, I'm serious, this is my business, get a solution that focuses on doing your tax, your accounting, your legal structure correctly. And hopefully, my recommendation, do this with a system that is automated. So
Mm,
as opposed to cobbling together a bunch of things, do it yourself, and stitching it with, yeah, I'm going to export this to a file and import it elsewhere and go to somebody. And no, you
yeah.
wouldn't do it to anything else that you do. The same way you want to manage your customer relationship in a system, you need to manage your back office in a system. And I strongly believe, and it's a principle of how we build Lettuce, that you should take a system for your tax, finances, accounting that is opinionated, knows your industry, knows that you're a solo, And that system can actually tell you what to do. It can guide you, it can give you advice in the process because you have a lot that you're an expert on. Tax and accounting is probably not what you're an expert on. And rather than going to some of that available online software that
Mm.
asks you 50 questions and you now have to make 50 decisions and go like, no, go to a solution that is opinionated and says, okay, this is what you need to do. A, have a business bank account. B, separate your personal from your financial. C, make sure you have a payroll that is at the right level. D, make your taxes on time. Whatever that needs to be, have a system that tells you the answer.
Mhm.
So you can make some choices. You can control what's yours, but you're not discovering it from scratch.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And not redoing it later when a mistake has been made.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, we have so many stories of people who come back and say, "Oh, I wish I had done this a year or 2 or 3 ago." Really, I use the word anxiety a lot because I'm talking to many, many customers, and you start the conversation and everybody's happy and they have this little problem, and then you start talking about the problem and you see that they have bottled up a bunch of anxiety
Mm,
about it, and
yeah.
it's there. It's not going anywhere, and it shows up in all kind of situation that you didn't anticipate when you take on an additional client or somebody asks you for a tax form or you have to submit something, and then all of that anxiety pops up and like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm so worried about doing this wrong. Don't get into that point. Start early. Those tools are not hard to implement. They're not expensive. It's all a business expense. It's part of your investing in your business. You get a website, you get a LinkedIn page, you get tax and accounting. Go do your business.
Yeah. It's one of the costs that I think it was maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago, just talking about really accounting for the emotional cost of some of the things that are happening in your business and addressing that, because we aren't just addressing physical costs, we're addressing the emotional cost too, which can be very heavy and self sabotaging.
That's
Yeah.
very well said. And in a business of one, our mental energy is the thing that drives the business. And you want
Yeah.
that mental energy to be focused on the future. The reason I keep saying accounting and tax is those are typically things in the past. So take some future mental energy, make a choice,
Mm.
get a great solution that is automated and works for you, put it on autopilot, put your mental energy elsewhere.
Yeah. Okay. I want to go back for a minute. There's a few topics I want to talk about and then we'll wrap up here a little bit. But the topic that I wanted to go back to is putting your CEO hat back on again as you think about hiring consultants and freelancers. Tell us a little bit about the way you think about paying those consultants. If you're open to telling us some of the behind the scenes, or when you think about paying them based on value or based on time, or tell us your thought process around this.
Yeah, 100%. I love this topic. So basically, my leading mindset into this is value exchange. And therefore, I'm coming into this conversation typically very open and very flexible. And I'm saying, okay, here is what I think we're going to get out of this exercise. We, let us as the hiring company in this case, and also you as the person who's joining our mission, let's put it all on the table and see what's valuable. And some people come back and say, we want to start hourly because we don't know enough. And I'm like, okay. Some people say, I have a retainer mindset. I want to know that I spend 3 days a week with you. I don't need to count the half hours. I can take a break. I can go on a week off. I have a retainer. It's good. Some people say, well, I actually want to take a risk. So would you consider equity in the company and not just cash? 100%. Some people will say, this is for me a way to get into full-time job. So I want to do this 6 months and then I want to talk about full-time job. And all of these are fine. And there are probably 7 more nuances. The idea would be, let's find together what's valuable. And when you talk about value exchange, sometimes you cannot define that in an hourly rate because you may only need 3 hours a week to give me something that I just cannot get elsewhere. And those 3 hours a week are worth way more than the average price of an hour. And in those cases, I would actually go to project pricing and say, we're going to put an SOW, we're going to say in brackets, likely 3 hours to 5 hours a week of work, but the outcome is X. I want X to happen. We do this very often. And then you price for value. My advice to CEOs and to solos is talk about it, put it all on the table. Some are very experienced and have seen all of the angles and are able to just negotiate from a place of knowledge, but some are not. You're going to meet a couple of other young CEOs or young solos and they don't know all the options. And this is a joint pie. Don't fight over the slice. Like make the pie larger and the slices would be good for everybody.
There's so many clips from today's conversation, but that's such an important one, Ron, because it's so fascinating to get into your headspace as a buyer of consulting. And you think the way that consultants would love for buyers to think. And there are more of you out there. And to your point of, let's have this conversation. Let's have the conversation because that CEO might not have gone down this path before, but it doesn't mean that they're not willing to. And having that conversation with a CEO to really put it all on the table, like you just described, in a way that works for both of you versus just taking what you think is the least resistant path and offering an hourly rate or a daily rate.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think we should carry that message to as wide an audience as we can. This idea of goodwill and solving it together goes a very long way. If you're not willing to be open with the person about the rate, how would you work with them the day after being open about your business and the problem you have to solve? I think this adversary mindset of procurement organizations in large corporations from the last century of like, I'm going to squeeze the extra dollar and I'm going to pay you net 60 because I make another dollar on the float. Like, folks, this is gone. We're solving a problem together. This is the age of information workers. Nobody's going to abuse the other side for more than 5 minutes. Put it on the table, solve it together. There is a lot of upside. I want people to share the upside as opposed to optimize the dollar. I've seen it in large corporations. I know that this is hard, but I encourage everybody to really like put themselves out there.
Yeah. And I think this is an important thing to think about as a solo, that there are companies out there, there are CEOs out there. You are one of them. There are others that want to have this kind of collaboration, whether you're in a sales cycle or after the sales cycle. And to your point, you don't switch hats all of a sudden and start becoming really transparent. If you're not getting what you need out of a sales cycle to understand what the value drivers are and what the inputs are, then maybe take a pause and say, this might not be the best client for me.
That's very well said. And it requires some courage. But I think, as we said earlier, as you climb that maturity ladder of your business, that courage is part of what makes you great. And you say, I know how to choose my clients and I know how to tell them what works. And trust is a huge factor. So let's put it into the equation as early as possible.
Yeah. So good. Okay, I have to go down this path before we wrap up. A few more things. The first is, tell us more about your thought process around what might a billion-dollar business of one even look like. It's so mind-blowing in so many ways.
Yeah, so it could take many, many shapes. I'll give one example that most people don't know, but at Lettuce, we took our seed investment and Series A investment from an investor called Zeev Ventures, run by a single general partner. Oren Zeev is his name. He is now running his 10th fund as a VC, and he has about $2 billion under management. He doesn't have staff. He doesn't have an office. He doesn't have people running around. Like, he is the venture capital firm. And if you think about it, he's managing $2 billion of investment. That's almost unheard of. He doesn't go about talking about it, but it's an example of, it's a business that started with him saying, I want to invest in great founders. I want to do it in person. I don't want to build a team. I don't want to build an office. I don't want to show off. I just want to help great founders. And it worked and worked and worked. And at some point, it became a really large business. I'm pretty sure that if you talk to him, he didn't imagine having $1 billion business when he started. He was like, I enjoy investing in founders. So one random example that's very close to us. But just as much, you're seeing internet influencers, you're seeing people out of Shark Tank, you're seeing creators, you're seeing media personalities that are running very large brands out of basically what they do. And
Mhm.
I think with the advances in AI and automation and software, etc., it's going to be easier and easier to do that. And I think it's a great aspiration. And even if you land at $5 million, that's nice. Like, let's remember, some of us are still trying to figure out the first 50K
Right.
before we climb all of that ladder.
Yeah. I think, to your point, just spending some time imagining what could that look like? What might it be? And creating this space from where you're at right now, even if it's 50K or 500K or whatever, to create that space to imagine things so differently. I mean, what you just shared about your investor is not anything that I've ever had in my mind, that you could run a firm like that without any staff. It seems unreasonable and just not even something that's possible. But it is possible based on what you just described in real life. So just rethinking things in a very different way in that CEO thinking time that you've got, running a business of one, to imagine how you might deliver differently and be one of those $1 billion businesses of one. Or like you said, even if it's 5 million, that's nothing to scoff off, right? Yeah.
Certainly.
Scoff at. That's the word I was looking for. Amazing. Well, tell us a little bit here. I could talk to you all day, but in the interest of everyone's time, let's wrap up now, and hopefully in the future you'll come back, because this has been so incredibly valuable.
I would
But tell
love
us
that.
a little bit about, for the listener out there who does want to start automating their financials, tell us a little bit about who is the best client for you and for Lettuce.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So at Lettuce, we believe that people who think of their business as a business are the best customers. We have found that typically people who regularly make more than $100,000 for 2, 3 years in a row, or 70, 80K with a positive trajectory, are people at the level that says, okay, this is a business. And at that level, they can definitely benefit from a lot of optimization to their tax, to their accounting, benefits, etc. That's a sweet spot for our customers. And we really help them automate the whole process, running their business, the compliance side, all the guidance that they need, banking, payroll, invoicing, filing everything that they need to do, anticipating their taxes, and then saving a significant amount on their taxes. Because I think at that level, when you're making six-figure regularly as a business, there are tax strategies that you should unlock. Companies have been doing this forever, and the solution for that exists. The IRS decided that they want to have a thing called S Corp, which is designed for business of one, and it's been in the books forever. Many people either don't know about it or don't know how to use it, or we talked about anxiety, are worried about making a mistake. And we're saying if you're in that category, you're running a business, you're making good income, you think you're going to stay in this, it's not a gig, come to
Mhm.
Lettuce and we'll help you run your S Corp in a way that is really efficient. And the reason I'm saying this, the reason I'm so passionate about it is we looked at the number. There are 5 million people in the US, 5 million, who make more than $100,000 and file their taxes as a sole proprietor, what's called Schedule C in the IRS language. They basically say, I don't think I'm a business. I'm going to file my taxes as an individual. And if you start looking at those numbers, that's about $200 billion of unmanaged taxes, because taxes are the largest expense of most of those people.
Mm. Yeah.
It's bigger than the rent or the mortgage or the food or everything, and it's unmanaged. So we would like to be in a place that we put back a big chunk of that into their hands. And
Mm.
we did some math. You could argue the numbers, but there's probably 40, $50 billion of overpaying taxes that people could put back into their business. And if you're now in government and you're trying to make policies to make that happen, it's going to take you years and years and years to make the right policies to put back $50 billion into small businesses. Everybody talks about it, but it's hard to do.
Right.
The structure of S Corp is already in place. It was designed for that. It passed everything that has to happen in federal and state government. Let's use it. Make
Mm.
all of the solos more efficient and more effective. So That's what Lettuce is doing. We're doing that as a software solution. We'd love people to use our product. It should be easy to start, easy to use, but ultimately help them make their financials much better.
Mm, yeah. And a simple way to look at this, Ron, who does it replace? Does it replace a bookkeeper, a CPA? Who does it replace if you've got people supporting you already?
Yes. So depending on how much you love each of those people, it can replace your bookkeeper, it can replace your accountant, it can replace some of what you would outsource to a tax preparer. It would definitely replace a lot of the work you're doing yourself to connect the dots between all of those people and the paperwork in between them. So we have people replacing those using our software. We have an AI advisor that's always available, like a pocket accountant that you take with you wherever you go. Some of those customers still have their accountant and they
Mm,
turn them into a financial advisor less than
mm,
somebody who runs the books. But even if you have an accountant as an advisor, you're probably not going to call them from the road every Monday afternoon when you have a random question. And when you work with an automated software that knows your financials every day, every dollar, it's much easier to get those answers in real time of like, oh, I see there is a check clearing from a client. Should I put more or less into my retirement? And the system can come back and say, you know what? You should actually ratchet up your retirement contribution, and you can make both an employer and employee contribution out of that
mm.
check. And it's getting close into Q4. Here is the cap from the IRS from this year. All of this answer would come back within 3 seconds. Probably the phone is still ringing on the other side if you were calling your CPA, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of upside in using automation for this kind of space.
Yeah, absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground today. I appreciate the generosity you have in sharing your experiences and your knowledge. Is there anything else we haven't touched on that you wanted to make sure we shared today,
Well, this
Ron?
has been phenomenal, and I really appreciate you guiding me with the question and asking on behalf of everybody.
Mm.
Hopefully, we're able to give something back that people can enjoy, and I'd love to be back. This has been a phenomenal opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. And we'll definitely have you back again. It's been so valuable. Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you
Melissa.
soon.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melisaliberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.